One of the most challenging questions for me in this whole process, and one of the most challenging tensions, can be understood in the following way: that growing up amidst New Age philosophy, teachings, books from the age of 10, I think I read Rudolf Steiner's Occult Science for the first time at age 11, and then on to Lazarus and Seth and Ramdas, Wayne Dyer, what's his name, Napoleon Hill, just the whole smorgasbord of popular New Age stuff. And one of the most common themes is, like Lazarus has said, violence is senseless. And I've never wanted to fight, number one. Number two, when you have deep emotions repressed, the opportunity to build the regulatory muscle. It's like if you've had this whole arm frozen for a lifetime and then it's cut off and unconscious. When you first begin to reawaken it, it will not be regulated. You'll flail around and you'll have to get your coordination. And this is a difficult challenge with any dissociated part of ourselves. But when what has been dissociated is terror, is violation, is unregulated energy coming in at a young age that isn't political, that's just responsive, that's just mirroring. One of the most pure and innocent parts of any human being is the unconscious part that gives back to the world the exact undistorted pattern that comes in. Hate comes in, hate goes out. Love comes in, love comes out. Because in that simultaneously divine and subcultural state, that's the state that doesn't judge, that doesn't know, that's not conscious, that is not reflecting on the reflection, that is not editing, just comes in and comes back. Now these people, in any age and form, often people with, quote, mental disabilities, what we call a disability, is simply the inability or the lack of discernment of, hate regulation, unregulated hate, violence comes in, and they just punch right back. You cause a noise to increase where it really hurts their brain, and they send a commiserate amount of pain right back at you to stop it. You hurt a baby without attending, baby screams in a process of disrupting your life to the same degree you've disrupted theirs. Loved and attended babies in some of the tribal cultures where they're just nursed and held and they're never put down for years, those babies don't cry. What they put back is a purring, gentle, rhythmic energy that is a pure and undistorted mirror of what is, which is a tended, gentle, loving energy. Now, one of the great hypocrisies of our world and our culture is that we claim the right to violate children in a variety of ways. We call it normal, we call it what could I do, we call it, well, of course you got to understand, this is a modern world and these things happen. Like, we didn't choose to be here, we don't choose to live this way, we're just stuck here. I mean, we have gadgets. What can we help it if they blare off in jarring ways? We have TVs. Can we help it? If violent stuff comes pouring out in that, so, but from the child's perspective, it's just not happy with what's coming towards it. And when it puts forth the unconditioned and unconditional mirroring, this comes in, I don't like it, here's it back, we then attack the child. I'm going to put you in your room. I'm going to abandon you further. I'm going to do this. And in the process of pain and the systematic programming, and in the conscious process of having this sense of self, this gap between stimulus and response being awakened, then we then tell that self that regardless of the toxins coming toward it, it is supposed to respond in the way that the culture and the parents want. So we'll lie to you, we'll bribe, but your job is to smile and say, I'm a great parent. In other words, your job is not to give an exact mirroring. Don't look hurt like that. I don't want to see that on your face. Don't look hurt like that. Smile. Smile. What about this? What about this? And it's a distortion of the direct mirroring of experience for the political end of the political brain, for the satisfaction, so that this brain, the overdeveloped left brain, can go on and say, see, everything's wonderful. You're smiling, good, you're all smiling, you're not going to get any dessert if you don't smile. Okay, we've got that satisfied, everything's wonderful. And you've now created a deception. So now there has to be, but tell the truth. No lying around here. Now you're really happy. Oh yeah, I'm really happy. Tell the truth. So it's this filter that gets built up. And we're all supposed to, by the time we're adults, to be able to appear the way we're supposed to be appeared, to appear. And effectively mask and block off the real direct experience of what it's like to be a spiritual human being in this place. What does it feel like to have this barrage of sensation? Like I drive through some man-made environments, and there's some of the ugliest, saddest sensory loads that I've ever seen and experienced. It's like it's hard to imagine something more hell-like than that. I mean, demons are at least nice and red and colorful, not drab and gray and box-like. Demons dance around. It's interesting, not static structures with no life, with no imagination. So it's hard to imagine anything so horrible. But the reprocessing of the brain says that's progress. What? Why is that progress? Well, that's an efficient way to design a business. Well, who cares? It's ugly. It's terrible. That person is saving money by building that ugly building instead of a nice building, because that's just storage. That's just to be used for this and that and the other. And that's not where that person lives. That person lives in a nice place that is disproportionately nice. You're driving through their hell, but that hell is there so that they can live in a nice place because they're smart. See, they don't care about you. They care about themselves. Oh, I want to be smart like them. I want to be smart like them. I want to have well, then you've got to save money and do this and do that, and you've got to be disciplined, and not, every penny has to justify itself, and and if you do that, and if you do it really well, then you can be rich, and then you can go and live in their neighborhood. And so there's all this manipulation that turns ugly crap all around into, wow, that's a well-run business. So we've got to do this, or we look around and we say, this is shit. I went to Palawan in the Philippines, and I hiked into the forest to see a native tribe. And on the way, I ran across 3 families. And the first thing my senses note is their home and their environment is nicer than anything I know or see in the United States, with the next best thing, like 50% of their quality of life would be Harbin, 50%. But their environment is twice as nice as Harbin Hot Springs, which would be kind of an oasis in a technocratic nightmare of boxes and hurried people rushing around and all that. And then they're friendly. Like, I just knocked on my neighbor's door after living here for 12 years. She's like, what do you want? I said, I just thought I'd say hello, introduce myself formally. We don't know. I said, is this a good time? She says, no. I said, another time, no. I walk up to 3 separate families. These are just data samples, because we can't be honest with what's going on unless we look at the data and look at comps on real scientific terms. I mean, quality of life. So their air quality, 3 times purer. The water they drink, uncontaminated by chlorine, by fluoride, free, nearby in the local stream. Their visual garden and environment, literally 500% nicer than anything I can design. So this is costing them a fortune? No. $100 in nails. I asked them how much it took to build their bamboo house. $100 in nails. How long will it last? About 7 years. How long did it take to build? Well, we all built it together in about a week. You love it? We love it. You happy together? I just look at the peace on their faces. 8 people living in this little thing. Not a single scream, not a single unregulated twitch, no irritability, no, I've got my video games, nothing. Presence. 300% presence. All the time in the world. So how much are they ruining the environment and saving up for retirement for all this? Nothing. They eat some food from their vegetables. They buy some rice from the village. For $100 every 5 years. Now, do they have noisy motorcycles driving by? Traffic accidents? Do they have to yell at their kids not to go out in the street? No, they don't. And so I try and do the comps, and I think, can I beat this? With all my rat race and all that, can I beat it? And I think, I'm not sure. I'm an addict, and so could I work through the addiction is really the question. My addiction to looking good, my addiction to appearing intelligent, the little kudos that I get in this culture. Being considered successful just because I can make a lot of money in a short amount of time, or whatever it is that people say, oh, that's a great life you have, or whatever. Do I feel as good and as peaceful as them? Questionable. Is all this super intelligence of the 500 books I've read in the last 5 years making me happier than they are? Questionable. Very questionable. But that's the thing, it's questionable. It's questionable whether my quality of life is better than theirs. And what I'm kind of looking at is this push not to fight, this push to be peaceful, this push to be accommodating. goes directly at odds with the biology of trauma. The biology of trauma says that when your life is threatened, when your being is threatened, when your social connections are threatened, and thus your life is threatened in instinctual terms, regardless of our cultural insanity, we cannot survive without one another. We cannot survive without one another. And we know that. And that makes belonging, in Maslow's hierarchy, it's number 2, a primal need, the need to belong. And so we're split by the culture between the need to be a part of it, and yet to be a part of it, we've got to disown half of who we are. So there's this thing, and then I'm split between the pain and the anger and the outrage and the fear that I feel, and all the New Age gobbledygooks and spiritual truths of, be peaceful, all this stuff, don't be violent, just da-da-da-da-da. And yet my peacefulness allowed all 4 of my younger siblings to be devastatingly abused. The peacefulness of the adults that did not want to be disturbed as I talked about it left my 4 siblings to be abused. The peacefulness and the forced peace with this desperate urge to survive and fight the threat has me at war with myself. This biology that wants to fight and that wants to run. And then this mind that says, no, let's be calm, let's be peaceful. So there's a tension between the traumatic circuit within the biology that has a program of be endangered, fight, flight, freeze within the body, express it within the body, and release when the danger is subsided, is directly attacked by a culture that attacks all 3 of those things as socially inappropriate, socially inferior, which further traumatizes the traumatized survivor. Because the deal is basically you've either got to fight your own biology and suppress it, and then create a war within your own body and freeze certain states in place, or be shamed again and experience the new trauma of being unwelcome and not belonging in the culture. So you're thrown around again. And then you look to teaching, you look to guidance, and it doesn't acknowledge the reality of the body, the reality of trauma. Instead, it's violence is bad, anger is bad, don't shout, don't criticize your parents, don't do that, don't do that. And it's a complete suppression. So then it goes numb, gets cut off. But then when it comes back, it's an untrained surge of volatile energy, because that's exactly what violation is. When a child is violated, they receive a jolt of untrained, unregulated energy. And then they receive the message, if you respond and send this back, if you don't get that some part of you, some protector needs to come in and interrupt just the natural bouncing. Because in the mirror, you throw a ball at it, it bounces back. You throw an image at it, it bounces back. But you have to learn to anticipate these patterns. It's like, I've got to catch that hate and pull it inside of me and then give something else back. Because then I will be accepted in a culture that values politics and lies more than truth, emotion, direct experience, and direct, uncensored, into me you see. I don't want to see into you. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. And I don't want to see that. Don't let me catch you doing this. Don't let me see that again. Don't let me see that. Not, Let me see that. Aha. Who's in there? What do they feel? Why do they want to punch me? Ah. When I said that, that really hurt you. Yeah, it really hurt me. I felt really small, and then I wanted to cry, and then I knew you would judge me as soon as I burst into tears. So I want to punch you. Ah. Now I get to see my own toxicity. Thank you. That's all very intelligent. I'm going to learn what I'm sending to you from your response. And I'm going to let me look at that. You're absolutely right. I don't want you to do that. I don't know what to do. I feel helpless. I'm not trained as a parent. This is better than I got from my parents. I feel like completely out of my depth, and I'm so scared of admitting that I'm going to do anything I need to shut you up. But I get that you would want to punch me for that. I mean, that's how I feel, when someone does that to me. But I'm a kid here too. I'm just a scared little boy putting on. I've just built up these masks. I know what this culture wants of me. But that's about all you have here. Someone that knows how to play this very deceptive and destructive game. And the most important rule in the game is not to talk about the fact that it's a game. Because everyone gets upset if someone starts opening the hood and looking at how bizarre. It's like, so this toxin goes to here, then it goes to here, and it goes over to here. And then just when it has a chance of redeeming itself and becoming a positive energy, then it gets hit with that. Then it gets denied existence. Oh, I see. We can't talk about this. The whole culture would fall apart. Of course it would. Because it's built on lies. Of course the culture would fall apart. It's a complete lie. We can't have that. We can't have chaos and da. Well, can't we begin by admitting it's a lie, not throw it all apart immediately, and kind of maintain a graceful balance of destruction and construction and end up with something healthier and new? Can't we look around the world at what are the healthiest bits of the healthiest cultures in different areas and add our imagination? And can't we rebuild something? And can't we have at least a conversation? We don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Why? What could be more important? Well, I don't have time to answer that. Well, why not? Well, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing that. Well, I don't want that. Well, the whole thing falls apart. Well, we just can't talk about it. We are not having this conversation. We are not having this conversation. Now, when you get the level of terror, the level of rage, violence, and terror, sheer panic that human beings get in when they get to this edge where it could all fall apart, the mask could be lifted. You understand why mushrooms are Schedule 1, despite an LD50 that is off the charts. Why LSD is Schedule 1, despite an LD50 that is off the charts. You can take 300 times more than the recommended dose and still survive with LSD. Try doing that with some pharmaceutical drug. You take 3 times the effective dose, some people die. 3 times. It's a high risk, very low, it's highly toxic. Marijuana, you take the effective dose, you go 200 times over the effective dose. You can't kill a body that way. You take the effective dose to get drunk and... So why are these things so terrifying that they can't be discussed? It's this mask. And we have to be compassionate for it. We have to be compassionate for the human being who has been told they are an adult and doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. And just it's a very, very but people are very good at protecting themselves. Like, I have been amazed at the efficacy and efficiency with which keeping busy, that's a great one. It's like, keeping busy, I don't want to talk about that. I can't track that. I won't track that. I forgot what you said. I won't do this. I won't do. It's like, I won't go into this fragile area where the ego is terrified because it could all fall apart in a few hours. But the amount of hostility that comes on a child who is unburdened with that fragile house of cards and just walks in and starts to knock it over is immense. It's my observation that a noticeable percentage of the population would willingly murder their kids as long as A, it was necessary to protect the delusions and the addictions and the traumatic terrains, number one. And number two, if they can do it in a socially sanctioned way. It's crowd dynamics. You find bizarre, and you'll see this in a crowd. I mean, you look at the medical experiments, some of the Harvard medical experiments around prisoner and guard type of dynamic, the torture cells where actors were hired to see what ordinary people. You look at Germany. And these are not them. These are dissociated us's. These are not them. And you realize, as long as it's sanctioned, you look at these crowd dynamics. The authorities know you have to be careful not to have a crowd around someone wanting to jump from a tall building, because in a crowd dynamic, whether it's a bullying dynamic, a gang dynamic, or just a crowd dynamic, if it gets that it's okay, for example, to tell the person to jump, a chant will come up. Now, it's a very interesting dynamic to see how that social acceptability escalates things. If someone is being raped and it looks like strangers are invited and passers-by, it's like, oh, it's happening already. I mean, I'll just, everyone else is doing it. I'll just fuck her a bit myself and then I'll go on. It's not me. I'm just participating. And this is important shadow bits to own, because it's a default. If you don't have this piece, it's not because, oh, I could never do that, and I don't want to think about it, and I don't want to look, and I don't know how other people could do that. That's denial. If you wouldn't do that, it means one thing. It means you've seen that in other people and you've understood it. And you've made a conscious choice to fight it. If you're born in America, you are a chauvinist, unless you fully understand it and you know why. You know what the payoffs are in the culture for being a chauvinist. And you are willing to fight it for some value of your own. You're willing to betray the culture, because it does betray the culture. When everyone says, oh, you know. No, I don't know. That's not the way it is in my reality. No, I don't know. In fact, I know the opposite. If you are one of those people, it's because you've seen the reality of that dark shadow within yourself and within those you love and within your country. And having seen it and having understood it, you have fought against it. Anything else is denial and default. The default chauvinism, racism, aggression at different parts that are universally attacked. There's an incredible amount of hostility around need, for example. And if you look at someone in a desperately needy place, and you feel the honor and the dignity of helping and protecting that person, the honor and the dignity, and you see the beauty and the truth of their need, and that's all that matters to you. You have rebelled. You have broken the curse. If you patronize them, oh, I'll just do something nice. Oh, I'm so much better than these needy people. Oh, those needy people, I guess I've got to help them again. The default is betrayal in this culture. We betray with blame, with shame, with isolation, with abandonment. And if you do something different, it's because you see that in yourself. You see the mirror. We all start off a pure mirror and just bounce back and are. One of my first awakening moments in my innocence was like 4 years old. And I was, we start off completely unaware. There's no filter. I was like 4 years old. And I don't know how long it had been happening because I wasn't aware of it happening. I was completely not there as a self. I was just a mirror. But I look up and I see my father watching me. And I become aware of myself through his eyes for the first time. And then I say, well, what is he seeing? And I look back at what I'm doing from his eyes. And I can see that for some time now, I have been bringing my 2-year-old sister to tears and then making her laugh, and then tears, and then laugh, and then tears. I'm causing pain until she cries, and then when she reaches that stage, I'm reversing until she laughs. Tears, laughter. And there's no malice or anything. I'm learning what it's like to express the patterns I've received. In that moment, when I see myself, I see that I'm dirty. I see that I'm ugly. I see that this is wrong. But I see other things. I see that he will not protect his own daughter. He's been watching this for a while. And I see something else. I see, Dane, this is our bond. I understand you. You are like me. And this is one of my first moments in which I'm aware that I exist. It's like, so this is the ego self. So this is what Dane is. And I am simultaneously alarmed because there's a conscience that wakes up in me and says, something's wrong with this. This is not me. And another part says, oh, thank heavens my father owns something about me. Thank heavens there is a small thread emotionally through which I can connect with my father. A shared source of shame. And it makes him happy that he's not alone, because he knows this part of himself very well. And he feels shame, and he doesn't fully understand, but he feels alone. No one in this culture acknowledges or will forgive or will help someone like that, but he needs help. because he had this curse placed on him by his father. And he never learned how to get out of it. And on the one hand, he's this new age, passive solar home builder, heading up he named an offshore currency hedge fund, Gaia Corp, and helped raise millions of dollars, to invest in one of the leading hedge funds for philanthropy and and board director of Cultural Freedom Fund and this and that, and sends his kid to Waldorf school, and we'll make sure the murals are painted right for the 7-year cycle of the Rudolf Steiner, whatever you call it. But he will hurt that child. And he will not protect his daughter. And he will betray his wife. And the only bond into that very narrow sliver of pain and shame, the depth where he lives, the only way to be let in, to be the member of his club, is to join him in abuse. And I want to be like Dad. I want Dad to like me. I want to be like Dad. I want to feel something like Dad. So I have this split in one of my first, I didn't know I existed before, but I exist. I'm like this. If you're a parent and you don't know this part of yourself, you're statistically playing with fire. If you don't want to know this part of yourself, you are complicit in the delusion. In the delusion. We can see it on a national level so easily as we generate terrorists in our righteous fight, as we underhandedly. It's just no different. We exist in an ecosphere. There is a holographic matrix at every level of individual and group, and within the individual, the sub-personas. And if I don't know my hate, my rage, my brutality, my helplessness, the deepest loneliness, if I don't know the areas that I turn away from myself because I can't face them alone, I can't comprehend that I am doing that to others in my life. But we always betray in others the parts we betray in ourselves. Oh, no, I self-destruct, I cut, I do this, I overdose, I don't hurt anyone. What do you think you're doing to the people who love you? Of course it's hurting. There's no difference. Oh, but they're nice, they're this and that. And those bad people, that's the society's delusion to say that self-harm is, adorable and da-da-da-da-da, but anger at your parents, that's horrible, that's ungrateful, that's this, It's just delusion. Society's protection mechanism for all its crap. So who do I fight? I have been deeply betrayed at my core by Peter Sandhill, by some of the actions of the high facilitators, by my parents, by my godmother and kindergarten teacher, who terrorized me when I needed a safe place to calm down from home in all my hyperactive panic. She punished me for being hyper. She added to the abuse. She did psychological torture just like my parents, playing on all the worst fears, in which case my body got even more frazzled. And then she punished me for that. The induction of a symptom, the punishment of the symptom, the induction of the symptom, the punishment of the symptom. It ultimately explodes in violence, because that's what it is. It is violence. And if violence comes at too strong an intensity towards the individual, they will lose that gap between stimulus and response and just become a mirror. Just express back the exact way the world is making them feel. And we say, oh, no. Nobody makes you feel that. That your stories make you feel that. You know, there's areas of truth and insight. Everything is true. So pick the beliefs that work. Pick the paradigms and the data sets that work in that situation and listen to the results. If someone becomes an enlightened, happy being when you lecture them about story, then in that situation, in that moment, that element and their freedom to move within that dynamic may work. If someone has deeply repressed rage and trauma from being lied to everyone around, and that's, you know, they have been traumatized, they have been shamed, they have been threatened, they have been beaten, that's just a story. Why don't you change that story to you had a beautiful childhood with parents who did the best they can, who love you, and just let all of that go? Well, does it work? I think that's the question. Does it work? Is that a message that is heard by the individual as here's another manicked, panicked, uneducated, and delusional message that says, please don't tell me about your pain and your horror, because I would be overwhelmed, because I don't know how to deal with it, because I'm afraid of my own aggression, like you. So please go along with this new agey stuff so that I can get paid for my therapy and feel better and not feel challenged by you. Please do that. Is it heard that way, and is that the reality? That's the strongest energy vibe, the reality of fear. Is that coming with a signature of fear? Or is that coming from an individual that can and will go into any dark place with you, that can and will see the deepest truths of violence, rage, and pain in their own life and in yours, can face those without losing their center and getting totally sucked into the wound, who sees and is there with you, who knows you in those places? Peter Sandhill made a remark at the end of our session in which he said, it's so interesting, Dane. He said, there's some part of you that just knows, it just gets it. And then a moment later, there's this part of you that doesn't. And I said, Peter, it's a very, very dark prison in there. And I want your help to come in there with me. He said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. No. And he left. That's fine to leave. If you're putting yourself, or I'm an expert, I should be paid $175 an hour, I'm your teacher, I'm your leader, I know what's best, I can teach you things. That's fine. If you say, I don't know what I'm doing, I should give you a refund, because I can't go there with you. And I know how much I'm letting you down, because I let myself down in that same area. I can't do it. I'm sorry. And I do not deserve to be your teacher in this area. You have more stamina than I do to go into those dark places. I like to stay in the light. I like to escape back there. I'm not feeling safe facing the parts in myself that your path is asking. And so I am going to let you down. but not without understanding the depth of that betrayal. That's fine. But when that's done with a message of, that's ugly, I don't want to see that, that's yours, it's not mine, it's yours. This is always the deepest aspect of abuse. The abuser betrays, hurts, denies, refuses to help, abandons, triggers. And then rather than face the cowardice, the inadequacy, of, or just the uncaring, like, I'm not very loving, I don't love you enough to worry myself, I love you enough to come and do what I said, I love you enough to pick up my money, and then, I'm out of there. You're in a desperate place, I get it, but not my problem. But but then let's turn the mask around, and we're really great in this area. And if you need any help in this area, we're wonderful, we're caring. You see how we are in the workshops. This is how we're going to treat you. And we know our, da 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 da. And yes, and everyone else says yes, he's great, and da da da. But then gets a little dicey, and it's just not what I want. I don't care about the impact that has. I don't care about the impact that has on you, on others, on WIPA, on anyone else. And I'm so great. Then you confuse the person and you add to the isolation. Well, that's great and fine if you're an average human being and just say, I'm an average fucked up human being and I don't really know how, and I'm not going to take responsibility for this and that and the other, and that's just who I am, and let's be clear on that going in. I don't know what I'm doing here, but it's the betrayal. Culture sanctioned my parents having me. My father certainly played along with it also, but he certainly didn't charge anyone money to say that he could help them. I don't charge people money in this area because there's too many things it brings up. And even though some people say, I have amazing insights with you, you see me in ways that nobody sees me. There's a depth here that I don't have anywhere else. I'm not in that place, in a place of service. I'm in that place, in a place of fragile codependency, where I need someone to behave in a certain way or I lose my state. I go into that hell. And I can't rescue anyone from that place. I can't take a stand for anyone. So it's always this thing like, are you going to put me into a hell in the way that you trigger me, in the way that you disrespect my boundaries, in the way that you won't listen, in which you are my enemy? Because anyone is the enemy if they're thrusting me into that hell without support, without empathy, and without understanding. And I cannot find mature and educated enough clients to take care of me in that area where I could take care of them. And if they do, I'm so grateful for a human being that can do that. I don't want to charge anything anyway. And if they can't, and they put me through hell, no amount of money. I mean, I give up $30,000, at the drop of a hat to get out of a few days of that kind of hell. Because it's more miserable than anything I can imagine. And I'm all alone there. And I understand, because I look at the depth of that pain in me. I understand the pain that's out there. And I understand the pain an individual has to go through, or risk and be willing to go through, in order to be my friend, in order to be my protector, in order to be my teacher or my healer. And I understand that to a large extent, no one in this country, in the way that I have had the skill to create, because of course we say, oh, now that you say all that, Dane, oh, now, of course I would. That's not the person who needs help. The person who needs the most help is who needs and is going through all that, which are a noticeable percentage of people, particularly men, who have so much shame around even saying something like this, that they're never going to say all this. So, oh, I would have helped if you had shamed yourself and taken on further weight of cultural terror and paranoia and all that, and set yourself up to be judged by a majority. If you had done all that, oh, of course I would have helped you. We don't have the skill in this culture to take someone who isn't talking because they're terrified and ashamed, and who's pretending the reason they're not talking is because that's what men do, and who isn't ever going to talk because it's too terrifying, and pretend that nothing's going on, but is going to act out all the objects in their space without ever owning them. How do we help those people? Because that's the majority. Whether you're a healer, a friend, parent, the odds of your patient, your child, your friend talking to you like this are 1 in 1,000. So it's not worth betting on. But it's letting those people down. Not as, and it's not, this is, we have to get out of this absurd idea that this is an individual culture, an individual dynamic with individual choices. No one person can do this alone. This requires help. I would think at the level that we're at, 5 people in a circle with protocols that are held sacred, with courage, who understand this. 5 of our citizens with our skill level, with a bit of training, with practice, with humility, with awareness that it'll take a good year or so of practice to get good, with the courage to go into these emotions themselves. They can get out of this. I haven't been able to do it in therapy. I haven't been able to do it in friendship. I've never had 5 friends. 2, 3. My last strong male friend, his wife grew so jealous of the intimacy of our relationship that she fought him for 18 months on every possible level until he gave it up. Because she didn't know how to create this level of intimacy with him, and she didn't want him to have it with anyone else. She could have, of course, taken the challenge to say, I'm not going to betray his one friend, and I'm not going to betray my husband. I'm going to face the reality that I do not know how to be tender, vulnerable, and intimate. And my husband does with one person in his life. And I'm going to support that relationship. And I'm going to learn from it. And I'm going to ask to be included. That would have required her to grow, be vulnerable. She couldn't. She didn't. She wouldn't. That was my last male friend, 6 years ago. I'm sick and tired. The last female friend, her boyfriend was so jealous. We never kissed, we never anything, but her boyfriend was so jealous. First he abused her. Then he said, I'm going to marry you. And he said, we're moving because you wouldn't stop being my friend. So he just moved her away. That was my last female friend. this kind of truth and love is not common. And I have had it thrown in my face more than 1,000 times by people uncomfortable with its intensity, unable to honor it, unable and unwilling to love me. It is very hard to learn self-love when everyone is betraying you, when everyone is saying, you're not worth it. I'm not willing to take a stand and be by your side. I'll give it a try for money, but even there, it's uncomfortable, it's not convenient. I told Peter Sandhill I thought it was inappropriate, and I asked him to take money out of the relationship. He said, Dane, you don't understand. Money is my protection. I feel exposed, but this role, this money, gives me a protection. He stepped out of it for a little bit, and so I paid him in part so that he could feel safe. Which, if I had an abundance of people that cared, that understood, that were my friends, that were my allies, that were on my side in the human dimension, I could be very generous with the 99% that want something from me, but will not give me what I ask, what I need to grow, that want something from me and take it. And in many cases, I give it. I can't count the number of interactions where someone says, oh, I really want to talk to you about this, that, and the other, da. And I say, in what way? In what way? Da, da, da. You'd like this, and when would you like to meet? Da, 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 da. And I shape myself into the arena that gives them that gift. And they say, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Bye. Not, I'd like to be a friend for you too. This deeply soul-eating to be so thrown aside. Because, the answer is you have to be more assertive. And of course I've learned that. Many people complain bitterly that I'm far too assertive and controlling. But that's not a win. Every balanced win-win relationship I've had has had that, but it's not a win. It's not a win. Because it's not as beautiful to know that someone is giving as much as they're taking because I've negotiated it so explicitly that they'd feel like a shit if they didn't do it, even though some part of them like, oh, I have to do the massage for you now, I've got to, you're so wonderful, you're such a great guy for me, da 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 da. Thank you, I understand that. You're not such a great person for me. You don't ask how I feel, you don't forget, you don't remember the things that I say are important to me. You block my energy in this area, so I have to spend energy holding it back so that you feel respected. You don't volunteer these parts that I love about you, your tenderness, your tears, you hide them, you run away. You're not an ideal partner for me. I have to work very hard. And I have to be mindful of my energy. Do I have the energy to work that hard? Oh, well, men like sex and I'm sexy. It's like, I could give a shit. I can buy sex if you want to be bought. I give a lot in my lovemaking. You think this is part of the chauvinistic, dance where I'll do all this and work all this and all that, and then you will give me sex? What about me giving you sex? What about me tuning into you and not having sex? When I feel you need to cry or do something that's more on the surface, and I put being of service ahead of my physical anesthetic, of my pain. I'm with one of the most beautiful women on a physical level my entire life right now. She seems to want sex 3 times more than I do. But my caution is we're still building up through layers of self-image and peeling off layers and layers and layers of her abuse. And I don't want that process spoiled by the absurd message so many women receive, that I'm putting up with all this emotion, with all this dark stuff, with all this terror, so that I can have sex, because I'm not. If I couldn't help her, and if I didn't see the beauty of her spirit, and I didn't see the injustice of what's been done to her, I wouldn't be there. It's not an easy relationship on that level, but it's the most beautiful relationship that I have on this planet, or know how to have with anyone. Because she lets me love her easily, graciously, honestly. And she doesn't have a mask. So when I love her deeply, purely, and honestly, what comes back to me is pure love. It's a mirror. She is a mirror. Her trauma happened at such a young age. Part of her is still making sense of it all and just radiating back exactly what was done to her. And yet her mirror is so happy when she can radiate pure love back. Integrity and honesty and graciousness, when she can give all that back. And so I feel basked in my own love just coming back to me with such innocent joy. And I don't know a single woman, in meeting thousands, in loving hundreds, and being lovers with probably 80, 90. I don't know a single woman that I can do that with right now. That I can experience the direct, unfiltered mirror. And when I hurt her with my unconsciousness, my rage, all of that, it comes back just as purely. I see the hate in her eyes. And I get to learn, I just hurt you. Let's look at that. It's not your fault. Let me look at the program. Do you know how beautiful an unpolitical mirror is? There is nothing and no one who can teach you more if you are willing to see. No one can teach you more than a completely non-distorted mirror. You sometimes have to dig a little bit because she likes to hide the negative as socially unacceptable. But I dig down in there with her. No, 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 no. I saw that look in your eye. What are you mad at in what I just said? What are you jealous about? Ah, okay. I see it. I see it. Thank you. That's not your fault. I just gave you that. And you just showed it back to me. You and your reactions are completely healthy and beautiful. I'm not saying you're safe out there in the world, that you won't be attacked for this and judged for that and shamed for this and that. But I know where that originated. And now that I see it in me, I can look for, because I am a very direct mirror. Now we can look who shown that pattern to me that I've taken on because I was punished for giving it back. So I pretended it was me rather than just letting it bounce back. And learning about the pattern, learning about them. That's always how I learn the most about other people. I look at how I change as they come into my space. And that's such an accurate system that I've been able to pinpoint. I've been able to track that pattern back through ex-lovers. I've been able to see exactly how that light hits my mirror, analyze the pattern, look back at its source, look at the angle at which it was projected, and at what level, talk about it. With a conscious person, you usually get full validation. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, da 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 da. And where did that come from? Oh, it came from this guy and that person, and my father said this to me at this age. It's like, aha. I can understand that, and I see how that, let's look at the probability field of its impact on you. Let's look at how it's impacting me, how it's impacting us. And let's get you to change, i.e. delete the program. Express it, weep it, scream it, and delete it. And when I'm facilitating that, a woman feels safe. If she's going to be safe in that terrain at all, she feels safe with me. 70% or more, depends on the personality, but safe enough. And I stay with it, and our relationship changes. We are codependent. I have no other way of changing a relationship than to change the patterns that are being broadcast to me. And one of the great gifts of poly relationships, I had 7 partners for a couple of weeks, which meant basically either talking with all 7 every day or 1 a day. So I was basically spending 8 hours a day with 7 very different people, and I got to see 7 very different Danes. And of course, I knew that I wasn't changing, but I was becoming something in response. So I analyzed every one of the codes. Ah, I am a great chef for you. You have told me my cooking is some of the most delicious food you've ever tasted, number 1. Your body agrees with that statement. I watch you smile and open up. Because I want you to smile and open up, I spend considerable attention designing a recipe just for you. And so I am Dane the Great Chef with lover number 1. And I am this way and this way. And I experience these personas of my sexuality and this, and this. Relationship number 1. With this one, I'm a terrible cook. I don't want to cook. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. They never compliment the cooking. They complain. They complain about doing the dishes. They do this, that, and the other. But there's this other thing that's strong in the relationship. And that person knows a part of me that no one else knows. And once I learned that as a sensitive, I am largely a mirror, the strategy is easy. If I want to be the person I like being, find the person for whom what I mirror back are the parts of me that I enjoy. And my biggest battle is when I'm in love with a woman and she is training me like a dog to be someone I don't want to be. I had a lover who always wanted to get off the phone before I did. And I always felt hurt and abandoned and lonely. That in response to my truth, in response to this, she wasn't showing enthusiasm, she wasn't showing grace, she wasn't opening up. Because it hurt, I began making little passive-aggressive, sarcastic remarks. Kind of the typical chauvinistic thing, which is a little neg. She loved it. Instantly, she had another hour. Instantly, she wanted to have sex. Instantly, she laughed. She laughed at my negs. She loved them. She got aroused by them. So, of course, within a matter of a year, I'm analyzing the data and I'm saying I am the most sarcastic, cutting, and confused person in this relationship of anyone. Any time in my whole life, I've never been this cutting or sarcastic. I don't like it, and I've never been this way. So the source lies in her. That's the gift of poly relationships for me. Was one of the biggest denial patterns in the culture is to take the source, externalize it, and then project it on the person who's feeling and talking about it. It's like, I robbed the bank, I embezzled the fund, but this person is saying, no, there's not enough money in the account, someone's taking the money. And it's like, oh, it must be you, you're the only one talking about it, we're all saying everything's fine. So it's you. This is the big setup, particularly for sensitives. And so it's been very valuable to have a comp of 70 lovers and know that I would be those people with each of those people if I rejoined those relationships. And to know that I'm not in those relationships largely because what was sent towards me did not support me, meaning didn't make it easier, it made it harder to be the person I wanted to be. So I confronted her. I said, I am more sarcastic, hurting, than with any other lover. She said, oh, I don't mind. I said, I know, that's the problem. She says, it's fun, I enjoy it. It's part of our humor. I said, for me, it sticks in my stomach. I love you, I don't want to be cutting you down. Don't worry about it. No, I know you don't worry about it, but you are the only person in my whole life that I've spoken to like this, number one. Number two, I don't like it. Number three, it cuts into the amount of love that I feel for you. It cuts into the amount that I respect you, because I know you like it. And it's a confusing message for me. Will you change it? Change what? Change the pattern of giving me sex, laughter, and time when I criticize you, and withholding it when I don't. I don't do that. I've analyzed it. The data is 100% consistent over the last month. That's not what I do. Will you go to a therapist? Will you go to Ann Watts? Well, Ann doesn't understand my type of person. You said you loved Anne. Well, she wouldn't understand this. Why not? She's an American. So what? I suppose that's why I don't understand this? Yeah, Americans don't get this. I said, well, we have a choice. I do not like this path. I don't like who I'm becoming. And so I'm going to exercise our ending agreement. 1, if you prefer, or 2, we're going to go and get counseling around this. She defended this to the end and saw it fully. She was more attached to protecting the wound that this reenactment covered than she was to our love. Now, she had said she wanted to get married to me, but not enough to go this deep. The marriage wouldn't have been real without going that deep. It's just a label. We're married. No, you're not. You're married when you see each other in all the personas. And when a majority of those personas not only see one another, but respect and support one another and rely on one another and bring out the best in one another in partnership, in a conscious partnership. That's marriage. It almost doesn't exist. Doesn't matter what the paper says. If you have that with me, you're married to me whether you want to be or not, or whether you like the label or not, and it doesn't matter whether we get the piece of paper. If you're not married, no amount of paperwork is going to change that. The question is, are you willing to be married? And that leads back to the first question, are you willing to be seen enough to be married? Are you willing to be intimate so that marriage is even possible? Even possible, not even probable, possible. Well, it's a bit too heavy. I started this video because I've been reflecting on how to fight. The New Age, shame and abuse cut down the healthy protector of my being. Laden me with the shame and the ugliness of my father, in which it seemed that all aggression and all protection was dirty, something I didn't like about myself. Told me that violence was bad, that anger is to be let go of, and da-da-da. And all those Tsarist techniques and stuff. Releasing anger doesn't work with dissociated emotion, with suppressed trauma. It's like painting white paint on the outside of a building when the flames are inside the building. It does not connect. It's just going through motions. You can't forgive. You can't love. You can't feel anger. It's denied. And when it comes in, it's all the more frightening because it's not only an unregulated muscle, it's not a strong muscle. So it's frightening in its unknown, it's frightening in the social taboo, it's frightening in the metaphysical spiritual taboo, it's frightening in the lack of regulation and the lack of control. So there's a strong pressure to push it away. I've never been so angry, so hurt, so lied to, so betrayed as I felt and experienced with the facilitators at the Human Awareness Institute. I've never seen the hypocrisy quite so loudly. The room of love, committed to everyone wins. We love you. We're here to help you. We're great at this. We're doing what you need. This is all your stuff. Da-da-da. I've never seen it quite so big, so crazy making. I've never been, as an adult, so dependent for belonging than I have on the Human Awareness Institute. For the healthy parts of it. Every group has benefits and every group has liabilities. But the danger and the shock and the trauma comes when the liabilities are hidden and passionately denied and pushed onto the person who's getting hit with all that at one time. It's fine if they're owned. We're good at this, we're crappy at this. Trust us here, don't trust us here. Everyone is trustworthy in some area and not in some other area. The key thing around this, and one of the biggest reasons I'm making such a big deal, though it doesn't feel like a big deal to me, it's my life, it's the lives of those I touch. It's my responsibility to future participants of Hi. It's not a big deal at all. It's a human deal. It certainly feels big, knowing how close my life has come to ending, how confused and alone I've been. The challenge is how to deal with it. I'm terrified of aggression. I'm terrified of the stigma. There's a lot of politics in the social field, and transparent mirrors are terrible at that. That's the biggest gift of a sensitive and a fool, and it's the absolute downfall of any politician. I understand politics, I just don't have the energy for it or the capacity. I've never been able or wanted to lie. And, so how do I fight? How do I fight someone who hurts me just in being in proximity, who's constantly and subtly twisting the inadequacies of his performance into my shame, and then having to be pushed into a corner to acknowledge bits of that, and then meanwhile it's happened again. It's like this. How do you fight that? How do I fight it? How do I fight when I don't have hostility to the people? I have hostility to the pattern and the betrayal, the pattern of betrayal, ignorance, lies, shaming. How do you fight it? How do I fight it? When I look around and it's like I'm hurting because I trusted, not because they're worse than 90% of the other people. I'm hurting because I trusted, but they're actually above average. So if I really want to find an enemy, it should be someone below average in a rational sense. But I did trust. So I've been hurt here by these above average people who do not have the training in ethics and all that to do what I needed, what I expected, what I call love, what I call healthy relating. How do I fight it? When they need help, how do I fight it? When they don't want to learn, when the impulsive, spontaneous response is, no, you're not invited and this isn't our stuff. And that's across the board. what am I fighting? How do I fight? What's winning? Is it healthy for me to engage at all? Is it healthy for me to make these videos? Undoubtedly. Is it healthy for me to share these videos? More tricky. When I asked for help within the community, three people offered unhelpful advice. One person offered a helpful suggestion, which I followed. Two people were personally insulting and attacking. You know, I've never liked you, I've seen what you did here, and I hate that about you, and I want nothing to do with you. That's a nice thing to hear when you're in absolute desperation and asking for help. I mean, mostly silence. Few people blaming Peter, but not helping me. Few people blaming Hai, but not helping me. One person did more than all of the facilitators in helping me, and then betrayed me on 3 occasions. Beautiful job setting up the agreement in the container. Container is absolutely necessary for trauma. Beautiful job. She did a beautiful job, I did a beautiful job. I asked for exactly what I needed, held to it, was clear. She asked what I needed, established it, checked in with herself, said yes. Beautiful container setup. Beautiful execution. Such a relief not to be alone in this pain. She came to my house twice a week for a minimum of 3 hours. I cooked for her, we talked, we cuddled, and she was there to be supportive. And we didn't open it up to romance or anything like that. This was the healing container. The agreement was she could stop the container at any point, but I wanted 1 day's notice. So, for example, on a date or before a date or at any point, up to the date, she could say the next date will be our last date together. And that would give me the time to wrap up the container and hold what we were holding together. And I could get my bearings and not feel abandoned and not feel betrayed. First round, pretty good. It ended when I went to Thailand. I said I'd like to resume the container as soon as I come back, because coming back is very hard. I go from abundance to famine with complete inability to respond to that famine. And she is my food in this arena. She says, okay. We email and we're going to meet when I come back at this time. She says, yes. I'm feeling a little insecure because a lot of people betray me in this area. They just don't respect container or agreement. So I email, you're going to be here this evening. She says, no. Why didn't you let me know? I forgot. Why do you forget? I'm having a crisis of my own. I see. What's your crisis? I see. So you got that. Okay, fine. Well, here's what we do. We'll just stop the container for now. Is there anything you need from me? Okay. Once you're back from your crisis, you initiate with me when you are ready. Other than that, this container is ended for now. I can't have this thing. I don't want any uncertainty around this. That's a killer for me. Revs me up. I'm exhausted. She said, okay. We started. And the agreement was it'd be 2 times a week. I said it had to be. Otherwise, it was better not to have it at all for me. Because I need to have a solid identity to transfer into, or it just activates that liminal wound where I can't solidly lean on anything. So if I'm going to create a new identity, a new persona, it's got to be solid enough to hold that anxiety and that need for certainty. That first began when I could never bond with my mother. She understood. She starts moving the days around, and we skip. It's not 1 week for one. And I bring it up. She says, we'll make it up. And it moves again. And then she hasn't made it up, and she emails that she won't be coming, and that, so now she's skipped 2. And I said, you're not keeping the agreement, and you're not ending as you said. She said, it's too hard for me. I said, you could have ended when I went to Thailand. You could end now, but you are reenacting the betrayal. And she wrote back, she said, I'm sorry that your needs make keeping my agreement impossible. In other words, because I needed that agreement 2 days a week with a cancellation of notice. Because I needed that, and because you didn't want to do that, I said, why is that impossible? Because I have another date. I just met someone at a high workshop. I have another date. So you're choosing to break your agreement 3 times and end without honoring the closure that was part of the agreement so that you can keep a date. Yeah. I said, I will not trust you again in this terrain. In this terrain. You have given me more than all the facilitators combined. You are the only one in this community who showed up in the way that I desperately needed. And I'm very grateful to that. And I like you. And I get that this betrayal is not personal to me. But it hurts me so much that we cannot have more one-on-one interaction. This is not a mental thing. This is a wound you're stabbing into. And you can respect the fact that I have that wound and protect me with your integrity, or you can betray me and leave a knife in that wound. I can't do anything about that, but we had an agreement. I want you to understand that. That's why. It's not because I don't like you. It's not because you're a bad person. It's not because I think this is the way relationships should work. If I wasn't hurt in this way, I'd say, oh well, let's just meet when it works for you. Why not? It's better than nothing. It's not the way it feels. I can't have my body go into a sweat and rev up around someone because of the proximity of prior trauma and re-triggered trauma. One more relationship down the drain. She doesn't want to be named because of fear of the high facilitators. So I don't name her. When you've got no one, this is sheer hell. Same betrayal was happening repeatedly with someone I was trying to connect with in Asia at the time. Just almost every day. I'll be there at this time, we'll talk, fucked up phone connections. Oh, I forgot to charge my battery. Oh, it just fell apart. It shattered and shattered and shattered and shattered. Meanwhile, the high facilitators are having endless meetings without me there and denying the whole thing. It's just like, you are so clueless. a team member could do a better job than all 8 facilitators. Because the team member actually tried to give me what I needed, the best she could. And did. In way less time than you sat around meeting, making things worse. Excluding, refusing to answer questions, rebuffing, giving every reason why my needs, whatever they were inconvenient, awkward, weren't appropriate. I don't care. I wouldn't be in this situation if I hadn't trusted you. Not a single psychotherapist or healer would agree with your practice. It's caused me enormous harm, and I've paid for it. It's costing me my health, my savings, and my life. And you're so self-centered and so terrified of your self-image, you're not there. You think you're there because you're doing what you want to do and refusing to ask me, Dane, what do you need here? We're going to get that to you, or we're going to get you help. That's it. That would have dissolved it like that. We're absolutely committed to your health and well-being. We're committed to your win. How can we help? We're going to do the best we can. We're going to keep you in touch. We're going to include you in every way. How are we doing? And let's get you help. Done. That's ethics. That's excellence. That's health. And that's not blaming and punishing the client. Instead, the opposite. How do you fight that? Such self-loathing. Such stupidity. And these are not stupid people. They're frightened people. They're busy people. They're uneducated people. Despite all the hype about into me you see, in 30 in 30 workshops and whatever, no facilitator really sat down to see. No one asked the questionnaire. No one helped me see what I didn't see. So how do you fight this? How do you fight it? The only thing I know is to say the truth, to put the truth out to as many people as possible, knowing that most people, not all, but most people will be served by having more information, number one, that I would be served if I'd watched all these videos prior to doing High. I'd probably have a friend, because I'd say, wait, I don't know anyone who talks like that. I like that. You're a bit like me. Will you be my friend? Will you spend the time? Can we find a win-win? I'd get a friend. I'd get advice. I'd avoid pitfalls. I'd see the reality of the inadequacies and weaknesses of each of the facilitators. I'd see how I could still gain a lot from the workshops and would do the workshops. I just wouldn't spend my money on Peter Sandhill. And if he did hurt me, I wouldn't go to him. It's that simple. He is not worthy of that trust. And High is not worthy at the present time of the commitment to stand for a client and a participant beyond the politics of its own self-image and a facilitator. And that means its value goes down. Its value goes down because of that. Or maybe it stays the same because it was always that way. I just thought it was more committed, more resourced, more intelligent, had less gaps than it did, which is, part of our learning curve. We're all learning, and High is part of that learning curve for all of us. I've, of course, learned an enormous amount of what not to do and about this terrain and parts that can be brought out in me. And going back to that mirror, it's alarming to me that the darkest parts of me that I have ever seen have been seen in relationship with the High facilitators, which in my paradigm, I always mean that means there's a lot of darkness that's coming at me in a vulnerable state and being reflected back. And because it's a reenactment, there's a lot of darkness and suppressed rage and hate and all that that's within me that I never did give back. It's hosted in the stored regions of the body to protect me from knowing parts of myself that this culture attacks because it lacks the wisdom to heal, protect, and respond to those parts of me. So it attacks them, and any intelligent patient will attack the doctor who is coming in to whack its limbs off just because it has some judgment of whatever. And so there's this interesting paradoxical dance. But I include you in this question. I asked the high facilitators to hire a therapist so I wouldn't get hurt more talking with them, and so that they could learn without me being drained to be an unpaid teacher to fill in their ethical loops and all that, and they just ignored that. Peter Sandel said that was a good idea. None of them have been overtly hostile. They've all just expressed their influence without gathering or taking the time to see me or see what was going on or understand it or understand more of their own shadow and stuff. So there's just been interesting politics within the organization where Peter started out as my main enemy. Then Anne became my main enemy when she felt that Hai was being threatened by what I was saying. And then she became Peter's main enemy. And Peter cares more about Anne than he does about me, which wasn't a nice thing to notice, but is a consistent pattern. Peter has cared much more about Hai than about me, which is the joke, because that's the problem. If he'd cared enough about me, he would have protected Hai, because he would have faced his shadow and stopped his abuse. But he didn't care enough about me to do that. But when I brought it to Hai, he cared enough about Hai to begrudgingly feel pushed into a corner and do some of it. And then when Anne felt that Hai was in jeopardy, she cared enough about Hai, not me. I was in absolute agony for a month before she forcefully, but when I started writing my attacks, this is not okay, this is wrong, Peter's done all this stuff. She said, oh my gosh, this is terrible, PR. She sent it to Jason without my permission, even though she's billing herself as my advocate. Then she starts really pushing on Peter, and then Peter actually starts showing up, and the balance starts to tip from where in the first month I'm losing significant amounts of energy for every unit that I'm receiving in well-being. Because ignoring is the absolute worst thing that can possibly happen in this situation, and that's what they all did. This isn't our stuff, and we're just going to ignore it because it isn't our stuff. Okay, it's just so sad. It's so self-loathing. Like saying this isn't our disease, so we're just going to let it spread into our whole community rather than doing something to stop it. When flu virus, Asian flu virus comes out, we don't just say, oh, not our stuff, we'll just do whatever we want. That's their thing and we'll just let it infect the whole country. No. We say any deadly virus around the world is our stuff. And it's ethically our stuff when we started it, when our lack of training and all that got it going, when we are culpable, legally, ethically, morally, humanly, and consistent with our own mission statement, we are responsible. We have the desire and the will to do everything we are capable of to respond and to get you help if we can't, and to track the results, and to listen, and not dump our inadequacy on you. So this is then the question, like how do you fight that? I just feel sad, deeply, deeply sad. Not only for the terrified, abandoned little boy that was, I just felt like I'd just fallen off a building and I was just laying there and they were having meetings to discuss the insurance costs. $2,000 was too much. Peter had to let me know. Can't have this go on all day. I may have enough to repaint my office at $16,000 a stretch, but no. 2,000. It's too much. You realize your life's in danger and you're being shifted to a cheaper hospital because the person that ran into you doesn't have the character to apologize, own up, and see that you get good care when they're the professional. It's like, how sad does that get? And then to link that with your best experiences, with your role models, with your community. How deep the betrayal. It's absolute agony. And there's many aspects of politics around this. The language that I've come to learn in the last few years is not a common language. The amount of time it takes to go into this is a deeply taboo, it's the best I can say, an amount of time for an American to go into this. It hurts every single time. Peter Sandhill or anyone else implies that they are too busy living this fucked up pattern to take time to see the damage it's causing and to do something about it. It's a question of pure despair. It's no longer a personal measure of despair because I have my escape route. I can tolerate whatever level of abandonment and stupidity and judgment and shaming and denial and politicking and dissociated left brain analysis and discussion and debate and sociopathic treatment. Well, that is the disease. They have that disease. They've given it to me deeply. They may not be capable of anything more. But can I fight it with silence? When something's hurt you this much, when something has traumatized your life and threatened, I've had more than 100 occasions where the intensity of pain, physical symptoms and all that were so strong that I thought, I don't know if I'm making it out of it. So I don't know if I should be preparing for my death. I don't know if I should just be screaming and, just having a massive flame out. Let's go to the media, let's go to this. I am going to fight for my life and for some sane person to step in. I don't know if I do that, if there will be a sane person. Or if everyone will be so self-centered that rather than realizing I'm fighting for my life, they'll just self-centeredly be focusing on how annoying and upsetting it is. I like my emails to be 1 or 2 sentence emails, and you've ruined that. You have ruined my day. Now don't write to me again, because I have enough on my plate without having links to long emails. What can get more sociopathic and stupid than that? At least admit how big the problem is if we're going to abandon our own people, our own community, the people we say we love. Because we are such on a razor's edge in this sick culture that we have no emotional bandwidth to respond. At least own the problem and take this as another whisper. Not that someone talking about the problem is the enemy. So like, who is the enemy? Is it Peter? Is it Dane? Is it Hai? Is it the modern world? Is it the culture? Is it capitalists? Is it corporate greedy bankers? You know, who is the enemy? Is it Trump? If we had a different president, would none of this have happened? Is it my parents? Is it Peter's parents? Is it Sarah's parents? Sarah knows about this kind of betrayal. Her father abandoned her because she doesn't have the willingness to cater to his trauma management strategy, which is that he can face the tenderness and the brutality of his own emotions as long as his pride and dignity is maintained. If she doesn't cross the line and do something that he wouldn't agree with, then she's acceptable. If he crosses the line, he's out. She's out. Not because she did anything wrong, but because she could not live her life and be happy and cater to the small box necessary to maintain her father's sense of safety within his coping mechanism to manage his trauma. Incredible, brutal trauma that so many men have in the sense of, you're not a real man, you have no real value, I hate you for being weak. And yet, every man is not weak, is vulnerable. Every man is needy in some area, particularly around deep love that he has with a daughter. He's needy, he's vulnerable. But when his entire devaluation, shamed and pummeled from a sociopathic culture, has left him very clear and internalized the wound to where, whether or not anyone else knows, he will feel like he's not a real man because he accepted that wound, because he was beaten on so many levels that he was willing to pay that price to survive. And now he's stuck there. Stuck in a world in which he's shamed just for acknowledging need and vulnerability, and he can't get out of it without help, which means he can't escape the shame without more shame. That is a fucked up double bind. So now he's got to betray his daughter when she lacks the training to help him out of that, when everyone else lacks the training to help him out of that. And as every daughter or every child feels when they're asked to fit into the box of their parents' suffocating wound coping strategy. Every child wants to say, fuck you. You're not going to control my life. Certainly not as an American. I'm an independent. In Asia, they'd work with this. They'd understand. They'd make it gentle for that man. It's not the advice your friends give you here. Fuck him. You're a free woman. You're an adult now. You do what you want. He can go to hell. His coping mechanism can go to hell. And without it, he does go to hell. And so there's a betrayal. If that wound doesn't get healed, the trauma of being disowned by someone you need, if that doesn't get healed. If Sarah can't weep and fall apart in someone who will stand by her in the desperation of that need, it will not get healed. And the coping mechanism that she needs for that wound puts at risk herself and others when it's threatened. Every trauma that is unhealed and unrecognized gets passed to the next generation. Every next generation that doesn't heal and recognize the trauma passes it on to the next generation. It doesn't matter if that's a client or this or that and the other. How do you fight it? How do you fight someone who by definition is hurting as much as you are? Can you fight it? My way of fighting is withdrawal, truth-telling, love, hiring a professional to give me more than 100 hours of healing, more than 150 hours of healing, just to get through the pain. Because as a mirror, reflecting back what was coming towards me, I have never felt so much hate, so much violence, so much sadness, so much confusion, so much rage, so much helplessness. And that's the undistorted reflection the unedited reflection of how the high facilitators interacted with my wounds, my coping mechanisms, and with my values. Because I do have high ethics in these situations. Because when a very wealthy client called me and said, Dane, I spent $4,000 doing all that you said. You said my lawn would be green. And I said, yes, I did. And I said, well, isn't it brown? I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, let's have a look. I came out, looked, said, yeah, it's brown. And I said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, you would not have spent $4,000 for a brown yard. And I said, no, we wouldn't. I said, I don't know exactly why, but part of the deal was that this was supposed to be naturally green. I didn't understand the substrate. I was looking across the street at this composted area and wetland where it was totally green. And I just said, well, we just need to add organic matter here and it'll have the same thing and it should be green over here. But over here it had tons of sand. I didn't know the protocol to diagnose the soil. So my prescription was based on faulty information. It was based on ignorance. It was based on assumption. So I said, well, I'm just starting out. I'm 22 years old. I did all the work I told you I would do. And yet, you shouldn't have had to pay anything because it doesn't seem to have helped you. Now, you'll still keep the benefit of organic matter in the soil and all that, and it's more level and all that. But I think the fair thing is to give you all your money back. I said, okay, that'll work. I said, there's just one problem. That's a lot of money for me. I don't have any savings. It's a lot of money. I'm 22 years old. I mean, this would be one of my biggest expenses. I wasn't, of course, expecting this. I said, would you mind if I paid you in installments? And they said, okay, they're rich. So I gave them $2,000, then I gave them another $1,200, then I gave them another $800 over a 18-month period. They didn't need the money. I did. It's perfectly obvious, though. If I'm going to go out recommending something, and it's based on ignorance, and people are going to spend thousands of dollars, and it doesn't work, that's not right. Why would I ever hire a professional like that? Of course not. So, zero flack, zero denial, zero resistance. Just look for a win-win to ethically do and leave them satisfied. And of course, the sweet part of that story is they turned around and gave me the biggest job of my career until that point, because I treated them well. because I put them first, because I valued their perspective and attuned to what seemed right from that perspective more than my own, my perspective. I've done all that work. I did everything that I said. I mean, who was to say that, right across the street, there's green grass, but over here there isn't. This isn't my fault. I'm just a young person. I didn't charge them a huge hourly rate. I only charged them $18 an hour. It's not like I'm putting myself out there as one of these $100 and $200 professionals and da-da-da. They got good value and I did it on time and I cared for them and I did my best. Da-da-da-da-da. No, that's my perspective. Their perspective is, they called me out. I said I knew what I was doing. I did it. Didn't work out. They don't like it. It's natural. Give them it all back. But people like to be treated that way. And I believe, that hearts and minds, that lives, that loves, are priceless. Gardens are gardens. The biggest refund I've given, $30,000 check. It wasn't fair. It wasn't about that. It's just, I want my clients to be happy. And you can't argue with them if they're not. They're not okay. It's sometimes I do, but ultimately I'm going for a happy client. And if I don't get that, I've failed. I've either taken a job I shouldn't have taken. I made some mistake, and it's up to me, the professional, to make it right. So that's also, that's something that, you can learn something from the positive or the negative. So how would you, if your best friend had gone through this process, if you recommended hi to someone and they were treated in this way, spent this money, had these issues, how would you want your best friend to be treated? And how close does that connect with the way that I was treated? What can you learn about treating other people differently? What do you think I can learn? What do you think I can learn in this situation to be an organization that you're proud to be associated with, that you feel safe to be a client with, that you feel is in integrity with itself and its mission statement, that you feel is a loving organization. I'm not clear that by sharing all of this out there, that it will help. I get nervous, I get scared. My biggest fear is that having watched this pattern, first a betrayal with Peter, then a betrayal with the high organization, and to a certain extent an abandonment within the community, my biggest fear is that the same sociopathic and self-centered process just repeats itself. That basically, for the viewer, it's not an empathic way to understand and really see and honor the trust and the vulnerability of a patient, of a client, of a participant in this type of terrain, of which I'm just a representative. And instead, it's an opportunity to have heady debates, to blame, to throw stuff around, to attack the messenger. But this is your friend that we're talking about, your sister, your brother, because it isn't personal. So I am and will do my best to fight the pattern. I don't know how. It's hard to get back in touch with the aggression that is a healthy part of self-preservation and learn to regulate it so that it has a positive, momentous force without either being ineffective or becoming destructive. That's regulation. Well, people who are in trauma do not have good skills regulating. Trauma steals those skills from innocent children and people. And you and everyone else suffers by my clumsiness in my regulation of aggression. But that is exactly why we need to take care of our children. If for no other reason, given the amount of self-centeredness out there, than that the haughty you who shouldn't have to be dealing with any of this isn't my stuff, doesn't have to deal with it. Because if you make it your stuff, to see that right and healthy practices are carried out as the children in your life are growing up, it will not be your stuff. If you make it your business, that your healers, your teachers, your community leaders follow ethical practices that don't hurt and traumatize people, you will not have unregulated, traumatized people flooding you with emails. If you don't, and if they don't know what they're doing, you'll have suicides, you'll have, like, one of my lovers is dead. A high person is dead. Not with me. But I didn't have the skill without this language. High did not equip me to be loving to her. I was actually dealing with the boiling over of this stuff. And that was the weekend Peter Engel was pushing me off. And I didn't learn until after we made love. Which he had invited and teased and this and that and the other, but also shown hesitancy around. A hesitancy I did not understand because no one had respected that part in me. A hesitancy I was impatient with because I was tired and terrified. And I needed help. And after we made love, and an explosion of need came towards me in a way that I was not ready for, didn't ask for, hadn't agreed for, wasn't prepared for. I sound like Peter. The only difference is I'm not charging her $175 an hour and saying I'm an expert. Then she tells me about the molestations, about the abuse, about the seizures, about the level of shame and violence in her life, about her coping strategies, and that one of her coping strategies is to hide her wounds so that men will not abandon and punish her and say she's not sexy for talking about them. This is why we cannot play along with a fucked up protocol. That when I said, make this public, make this a learning of the community, don't shame me. Don't make me your dirty secret. Talk about this. Own your humanity, that as a human being, you make mistakes. Apologize and integrate this with the community. Let's have intimacy. Don't hide this. Don't make me all alone after the worst and most lonely experience of my life, because you need me to keep your secret. She said, we feel it's better for you, it's better for High. We haven't even told the people in the office. Suzanne talking. Nobody knows about this. I said, can't you ask for support? You are not supporting. Can you ask for help? No, we haven't told the team. Well, tell them. No, we want to, we feel like but you're not doing a good job. There have been tons of team members who have been there for me more than you are. I know what that feels like to be wanted, to have someone there for you. And I know what it's like to be the undesirable burden in the room that you're not owning as your burden. You're owning as, Dane needs something again. Poor us. When's it ever going to end? You're not saying, we don't know our job. We haven't trained for it. We didn't qualify this. We shouldn't have taken this. Peter shouldn't have broken his agreements. None of this should have happened. And Dane is taking the hit because he trusted us. Dane's life is falling apart because he trusted us. And rather than being adults, we're so busy in our own traumas, delusions, and denials. We'd rather just make him a secret, tell him how much we love him. Anne told me, she said, Dane, I love you, and I love your little boy, and that's not going anywhere. But I've been around human beings. No human being has come close to loving me unconditionally, and this sounds like a promise of unconditional love. I said in my head, Anne, I'm glad you think that way. I'm sure you'll do your best, but I wonder what the line is. At what point will you betray me rather than do something really hard? And it was several points. Keeping me the secret. See, I don't think it's good for Hai that this is a secret. It certainly is not good for me. For this to be a secret means that both the most positive part of my life and the most painful part and the most threatening part and all of my reactions and all the impact of that is secret. And when I said, no, I am no longer keeping your secret because your protocol of secrecy and your thing isn't working, I'm getting worse. And I have never had a secret. I agreed. I made one agreement to Peter Sandhill. He said, I have only done this a few times. I haven't done it in a while, and I don't want to get a reputation for leading drug experiences. So you can talk about all this, but I'd prefer it if you didn't use my name, because I don't want other people asking, me to do this. So I'd prefer if you kept my role in this confidential. I said, sure. If you don't want to do more of this, fine. I only asked you because I remembered you had suggested this 10 years ago, and you've just been the only kind, sane person in my last workshop. Now, he turned that around to say that I'd promised never to tell the facilitators or anything, that else. That would raise a red flag right there. What do you mean? You don't want me to tell any of the other facilitators? Whether or not that's fine by me, Peter, you're teaching intimacy with these people. Into me you see. And you don't want them to see you? And this is a professional relationship, isn't it? You're not my secret lover. You're charging me $175 an hour to do something you don't want your colleagues to know about? No. I'm not going to agree to that. That's not what he asked. But later, when he said that he'd never trust me again in his life, when I told the facilitators, because I needed help, because I desperately need help. I desperately need help. And I'm letting it in the best I can, mostly with my lover and non-human sources and my crystals. Because people are very dangerous in this terrain. They have hurt me so much. And they're so unconscious and ignorant. It is very iffy. The probability of engaging with a human being to help me in this terrain is about 85% negative. I can't bet on people with those odds. But I need help desperately in ways that I don't fully know how to respond to. And I do not expect that from this community. In that sense, it's not about me. I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for a safer place for you. Because if you do not feel safe knowing that these things happened, if you don't feel safe knowing that this is who I am, you have just been empowered to make new choices. I have always tried to let lovers and friends know the thing that I thought they would be most challenged to love and accept in me. Not because they asked it. We're in a crazy, fucked up world where people feel betrayed day after day after day when they discover things about their partner that they would never in a million years dream of asking. They just assume, because you're handsome or this or that or the other, that you're this way. Assume, because you've written a book, that you're this way. There's no into me you see. There's assumptions, assumptions, assumptions. So I volunteer. I've had dates tell me how wonderful I was. And I see they haven't learned a damn thing about me because I haven't asked anything real. So I open it up. What do you mean? What have you assumed about me so far on this date? Oh, this. Well, you're wrong. 85% of that is wrong. If you interviewed my last 4 lovers, they would not agree with your projection. Just thought you ought to know. It doesn't mean I'm not an amazing person to date. It doesn't mean you won't have phenomenal growth. It doesn't mean you may not be loved in ways you've never been loved. It just means you're wrong in 85% of your projections, which means you shouldn't go forward on the basis of those projections. What are you going to do? Well, usually they get up and leave. So affronted that I'm clearly not going to play along with their delusions, and so I'm kind of ruining the first 3 to 6 months of the relationship in the game of let's project all these wonderful things, be all hopeful, spend all this time anticipating. Don't call me right now, I'm busy anticipating our next date. No, I'm not interested. Let's tell you exactly what I'm thinking and feeling right now. I'll tell you on a 1 to 10 scale how angry I am, how scared I am, how about that? It's not very romantic. What are you looking for? Scarlett O'Hara? Just go find another projection who's not going to ruin your plans. I will. It's when you're lonely, when I'm lonely. The reason I do that is that isn't intimacy, and it isn't love, and it isn't connection. It's delusion. I'm not going to put myself through that just to pretend that I'm loved. When if the person saw me clearly, they do not have the ability to see my beauty. It's not personal, but it's also not love. How would you fight this? What part of it do you own? Will you fight for the community? Will you fight for the facilitators? Will you take something like this and talk with your partner? Will you talk with your children? Will you talk with your parents? Will you make a video? Will you cry? Will you give me respect, support, love, blessing? What will you do with this? Because one of the most destructive aspects of the pattern that I'm sorting out how to fight is the pattern in which the culture is so well armored that the abuse survivor gets abused for being abused, then they get shamed for being abused, then they perform worse and are shamed again for their weak performance. Then it's all blamed on them in a diluted mythology that we are disconnected and independent individuals that have no influence on one another. So in that good old macho military tradition, who's responsible for the fact that your military officers stuffed toothpaste in your shoes, pulled your pants down, hid your clothes, kept you drinking up all night? Who's responsible for that? I am, sir. I am, sir. That's more like it. Now show up properly tomorrow. It's abuse. It's absurd. It works in a certain sense. There's a value in a certain sense to focusing 100% of one's responsibility on what one can do about it. And you do learn, okay, those fuckers are out to get me, let's watch out for them, etc. But if they're really determined, you got 3 or 4 of them and they want to smear toothpaste in your shoes every night, they're going to do it. In a fucked up military context, if you go to the officer and say, I cannot perform my duties because I've got 4 bullies ganged up against me, and there's no space to talk about it, if every time I try and explain they say, who's responsible? You are. It's fucked up. And we say, you're the hero. You're the hero for being fucked up. You're the hero for being sociopathic, delusional, fucked up, disconnected from your feelings, and putting up with a sick environment that trains you to kill other people in ways that are often questionable in recent years. So what's the hero in that? If you buy into it, because that's the only thing, the only area you've gotten any respect for in your life, it's a big deal to let that go and say, you know, that whole thing was a pile of shit. All the validation from those sources mean nothing, because none of them saw who I am. None of them supported who I want to be. None of that behavior lined up with my essence. And I can't say that that's the case for all military people. I know it is for some. And I know it's really hard for our military to be shoved into the deep neediness of PTSD when they have internalized the idea that they are shameful just for having feelings. Very hard. Thank you for being present with us. Thank you.